This is DeliveranceMinistry.fm VideoCast episode 12. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to this episode of DeliveranceMinistry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. My name is Dr. Don Ibbotson, and I'm here with my co-host and colleague, Dr. Phyllis Tarbox, and today we're going to address the topic of deliverance ministry for children. We'll be sharing our experience in that realm, and actually Phyllis is going to do most of the sharing because that's really the area that she's focused on, and we're going to tell you and share with you what the Lord has shown us about dealing with his precious little ones. Before we get into it, though, I want to just mention a couple of few handouts that we have on the Deliverance Ministry websites. They're really downloads. If there's the three that I want to really highlight very briefly. One manual or handout, if you like, is called 10 Facts Every Christian Should Know About Deliverance Ministry. Okay, concise, to the point. Things that every believer really should understand about driving demons out of people. Second handout is 7 keys to becoming a successful deliverance minister. I know there's some people to this podcast here listening and there's something stirring in you at time to time saying, man, I think I'd like to learn more about ministering deliverance. This is a handout you want to get. And finally, another key thing, a book that we have for you, a little ebook, is called 7 Questions to Answer Before Becoming a Christian Counselor. Once again, Christian counseling, deliverance ministry, it's all part of helping people. And I know there's people out there, because that's the path that Phyllis and I have come down. We're deliverance ministries, but we're also Christian counselors. And it's totally free. You just put your email in. You'll also there have an opportunity to sign up to receive email alerts from us when we publish new articles, podcasts, and videos. So totally free, no obligation, no anything. We won't spam you. We promise. And finally, stay tuned at the end. We'd like to get you a copy of our free, we'd like to get you a copy, a complimentary copy of a manual that we sell at our store. It's called Deliverance Ministry, Plain and Simple. And I'll tell you how you can get your hands on that. All right, let's move into today's main topic, ministering deliverance to children. Now, if you know, are familiar with us through the website or some of the other podcasts, we talked a lot about topics generally about ministering deliverance, typically for adults. And we talk about all sorts of open doors, generational sins and curses. There's cultic sin, there's sexual sin, soul ties, and we've been doing this for a long time. We've been in deliverance. We've been around as a center since 2008. I've been in deliverance ministry since 1998 myself, and ministered to a lot of folks, and my focus, frankly, has been on adults. But some number of years back, and I can't remember exactly when, Phyllis, but the Lord started bringing us, we get calls from parents looking to bring their children in for help. And finally, I went to her one day and said, oh, gosh, Phyllis, you'd like to have an interest in learning how to minister to children? And she said, yeah, I'll take a look at that. So what exactly did you do? How did you get started in that realm?
I went to some of the patriarchs of the faith in this, which was Frank and Ida Mae Hammond, and a lot of you are familiar with them. They wrote the book on pigs in the parlor, but they also wrote a book on children's deliverance. And when I read that and I went through it, they laid it out for me in a very easily understandable fashion that I could kind of modify it to our approach and how we pray deliverance. And as soon as I got through going through that and really just praying a lot with the Lord through it and developed a very simple attempt at entering into it, I got our first phone call. I mean, it was almost within the
it was quick.
same
I remember
week.
That. Yes.
Yeah. And so I knew that was the Lord just starting, because, you hear it all the time, but we can't find anybody to pray for our children. And one of the things that Jesus said was, suffer not the little children, let them come to me. And so when the parents were saying, I need somebody to help me with my children, I felt bad. That needed to be part of what we were going to do. So we entered in and we began to start to go over it. So we formed a bit of a process, and it has some commonality with what we do as here in our ministry, with some differences, obviously, because the children have to have it adapted, and we've broken it into 2 separate age groups.
Well, maybe what I should do is just give it a highlight of how we do with the adults, and then you can tweak it from there, because I think that's an important thing. We had to tweak the process some, but ours is basically a 5-step process that we take people through. The first session is an interview where you get some background, understand a person's background, issues that they're dealing with. Then we do a teaching 2 is on open doors. Demons can't jump on people. They need an open door, so we do a teaching on that. The person has some homework to do and prepare. Session 3 is a teaching on basically how to close the doors or take away the spirit's legal rights to be there. And once again, the person receiving ministry, they have some homework to do. They're actively involved in the process. The 4th session is the deliverance ministry session. It's a 2-hour session, and it happens right here in our offices, pretty quiet and gentle, we talked about before, but it's a 2-hour session. And then the 5th session, typically a few days to a week later, is the follow-up where we show them how to stay free or walk and stay on, if you like, the narrow road to life and to walk out their deliverance. So that's our process for adults. And for kids, though, we had to tweak it some.
Yeah, so we modified it for the children, but the first and most important thing is we want at least one of the parents to have gone through either our deliverance ministry form or someone else's that is similar to ours, because to take a child through deliverance and deliver them back into a home where there's no understanding of warfare, spiritual warfare, then that's not a wise thing to do. So, either through us or one similar to us.
They're the spiritual head too,
they're
right?
The spiritual head,
covering
right?
For the child.
And that plays a huge, because once those spirits are delivered from the children, it's the parents that really have to prevent that from coming back. So, and the other thing too that I like to say up front is there's got to be some strong discipline in the home in regards to this, because as the spirits will use the children to play the parents and try to get them to be vague on their yeses or their nos, and you've got to be able to have good discipline in place first. If you don't have control of your children because of your own discipline problems, I want to say deliverance is not going to be an easy fix. You're going to end up right back in the same position as you were before. So keep that in mind. But we did break this into 2 groups because we felt that there was a different learning curve with them. So we have a group that we have tailored this for 3 to 8-year-olds. And then the second group would be the 9 to 12-year-olds for the children's deliverance. After 12 years old, we pretty much teach them like an adult. They're able to do most of their homework. But as they come in, the very first session, oftentimes even before that, is a phone contact, and so or an email contact about the children's deliverance ministry. So what I do is I will send all the paperwork out in that email contact, along with a journal for the parents to be able to journal some of the things that the child has gone through up to this point, so that I have it on file and it's right in front of me. And parents are very good at documenting and getting it all in place, because the first session, when they bring the child in, I don't want them talking about the child in front of the child. I don't care how old the child is. You talk about demonic activity in front of a child, the demons are going to manifest in that child, and it just becomes a train wreck. So a lot with the journaling up front. And then the first session is an interview session, much the same way, 30 minutes with the child, just me kind of watching them and how they respond to some easy questions in our environment. And then 30 minutes with just the parent, so that I can get the rest of the interview that's not on that journal sheet. So if, it's a one-parent household, then a lot of times that can be done on the telephone, or, you come in with the 2 parents. The second session is actually for the 3 to 8-year-old is the prayer, and we don't keep it long with that age group. It could be 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer towards the 8-year-old end of it. But, we don't want to keep the child long, and we always keep the parents in the room, with that age group. And generally we'll have an intercessor, and then also there is a follow-up session on how to keep the children free. We have tailored our prayers and our forms and our everything for the children, so it's similar but different. And then in the 9 to 12-year-old group, we've built in an extra session. So with the 3 to 8, there's 3 sessions. With the 9 to 12, there's 4. And the extra session that's involved with the 9 to 12-year-old is that we take them through an actual teaching on deliverance, on forgiveness, judgments, soul ties. We get them more proactive in a lot of their homework. Predominantly the younger ones, the parents are going to do all the work, all the homework, but in the older group, we, get hands-on and we begin to work with them with that. So that's just a little bit about how we do it. So 4 sessions for the 9 to 12, 3 for the 3 to 8, and it's modified for them.
All right. We wanted you to understand the process and the background because we appreciate that everybody does do it differently. A lot of places don't necessarily minister to children and so far, and it's all a work in progress, to be sure. It all is, everything in deliverance, but this seems to be working and helpful, and so that's felt like it's important you understand the process that we use to minister deliverance to children. So that's a little bit of that in terms of the background. Let's get into the kind of the main points of discussion I think most of our listeners are going to be interested in as they're listening to this. You're a parent of a child. How can a parent tell? What can they be looking at to help them determine if their child does in fact need deliverance ministry?
Well, anything that's becoming excessive, anything that you notice that's out of the ordinary, like excessive fear, excessive anger, a sudden onset of continued sadness, sensitivity, nightmares, anything that can be exaggerated with that. And in that first email that I send out to the parents before they come in, I include a child's issue history form. So they can go through it and get an idea of, where some of these things have come in. And I identify familiar generational things that may have opened that, a door with occult practices and things like that. And we'll get into that in a minute. But some of the influences that have been over the children, whether it was a phobic fear that came in with the dark, something with nightmares or animals, or the children were left alone. Maybe it was something that happened in a hospital or a doctor visit that could have established fear in the child.
So basically, you're looking for the parents supposed to pick up on something that say this isn't normal.
This isn't normal. It's something that's exaggerated.
And because I know I heard that from a mother one time talking about her kids brought in here for anger. I mean, parents understand temper tantrums, but I think mothers, especially many times, and the fathers too. I'm not going to leave them out. They just look and say this is more than a temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. They can discern something. So you keep using the word excessive. Anything that's just doesn't sit right, right? Mm-hmm. Anger, fear, nightmare, torment. Right. That would be clearly a thing that would happen. And I quite we had that with our son when he was about 9 years old. Just horrific nightmares. And my wife, just did deliverance on one night in the room there and called out a spirit, and those nightmares went away.
Yeah, and you can do that over the little ones, absolutely, while they sleep.
Yeah. So I looked in his eyes, and I remember with our son, I was just looking in his eyes and calling. You see he was there, but he wasn't there, and so that was a nightmare thing, and that's one of those things. So you keep saying anything that's excessive or just apparent. It's many times it's not a flashing neon sign, right? You just take some discernment that something's not, something's amiss here, isn't it? Right? Is that the bottom line?
Yeah, like you mentioned, with anger. I mean, parents have brought their children in because the children are threatening to kill them.
Yeah, that's not normal. That would be not
normal. That would not be normal. Or trying to hurt themselves or kill themselves.
Okay.
That sort of thing. And what I tell the parents oftentimes is, if you try binding up that spirit, specifically binding it with the blood of Jesus Christ, and you see it stop, right? And you see that behavior stop, and then you loose the fruit of the Holy Spirit on them. If you get results from doing the binding and the loosing, then you probably are dealing with a demonic spirit. Because I've had the children in the office where the parent would sit there and explain the torment that the child was going through, and then the child would start to manifest, and we would begin to bind it up and watch it stop, and then we knew we were dealing with a demon, right?
So that's Matthew, just again, in case, just want to emphasize that scripture, and that's a big one we use in our ministry here and telling people, is Matthew 16:19, where you can, Jesus says, I give you authority to bind on earth that which has been bound in heaven, we bind up the demons, and loose on earth that which has been loosed in heaven. So we loose the Holy Spirit on people. And generally, with adults, when you do that, we like to look in their eyes as we're doing that, if we can, and bind up the spirits and people. Do you do that with kids too, or does it matter?
Oh yeah, no, we definitely look in
Get their
eyes.
attention and get them binding
Keep
and
them
loosing in the
focused.
office. Okay, so those would be an indicator. Now you started to talk, and I guess we can go into that some more depth. And people ask, well, these spirits. I mean, we teach to believe demons just can't jump on a person. They just can't, not like some of them Hollywood movies out there that's, people, you can't catch a demon from somebody other just by, like you catch a cold, but there are open doors for torment. So what are the common, or the open doors that you've seen working for children to be tormented by demonic spirits?
Well, for the children, we have what they call an open doors list for the parents to go through, and it's the generational, just the same as is with ours, generational word curses. Anything that they've noticed that's been repeating down the family bloodline or that's been spoken over their child. Word curses have power. Could be things that were said over them that they were stupid or they weren't wanted or they were rejected. The same as what we deal. It could be also any words that may have been spoken over the womb while the mother was pregnant, while they were carrying the child. So we have them identify anything repetitious that's coming down through the bloodline and any type of word curse that may have been spoken over this child.
So that's an open door. Generational curses and word curses.
Open door number one. Number two, we take a look at unforgiveness. Again, And with the older group, I have the children write down the people that they know they've had some oughts with, some unforgiveness for. But generally resentment for people, whether they are no longer alive or whether they're dead, or alive or dead, and have them write down those people's names. Now, for the little ones, of course, the parents will do that if there's been anything that's gone on in the family bloodline. So any unforgiveness. Number three would be occult. Any open doors.
Like for kids, that's trickier, right? Because a cult that the kids have been involved in, typically, like what? Well,
and that would come in through like games, like toys, like a Ouija board or a mystical toy, or if they've gotten a lot into some of the Harry Pottery sorcery games, or they've learned the spells on the website. Movies, certainly, that they've seen, or any types of computer games. A lot of these video games have got a very heavy demonic overtone or an anger overtone. Not good. Anything that involves magic, wizardry, curses, hexes, spells, and a lot of the toys, I mean, I didn't recognize it back from when my kids were little, but My Little Ponies, all done in magic and casting spells, Rainbow Bright, any TV shows, some of the new ones, The Othersiders, The Wizards of Waverly Place, Medium Charmed, Ghost Whisperer, any clothes that represent skulls, demonic emblems, any types of hypnosis, horoscope, new age, superstition, anything that they've been involved with, even martial arts. We take a look at a lot of that.
See, a lot of parents are going to listen to this and they're just going to laugh. Some of it, because they just don't see the problem with some of these things, like some of the, Harry Potter. I mean, it's just, they just don't see an issue with these things or some of these games. I mean, what do you tell parents who have that kind of attitude?
Well, there is, because the way good and evil is presented in this, good and evil is evil, but the good is based on access for a new age type of a power or a mystical power. It doesn't have anything to do with the Holy Spirit. It has to do with accessing a new age realm. And you know why a lot of people discount this, Don, is because we have been very desensitized to it. We had things like Casper the Friendly Ghost and Bewitched when we were young.
Yes, I remember those well.
And they were like good witches. And so, we've been walked into this one step at a time, so that now we're getting into some of this real dark stuff where these kids are learning how to cast spells on some of these websites. And the books are out now for all the spells and things, with even the Disney Channel. We're getting in a little deeper, and so the parents need to be aware this is real. It's not a game. So that would be the occult open door.
That's Hosea 4:6 again, right?
Yep.
God's people perishing for
lack of knowledge. Yeah.
Yep.
Another open door would be sexual abuse. Okay, if the child had been a victim of rape or incest or any molestation, that would certainly be an open door for torment. And then one of the last ones that we go through is any type of soul tie, people dead or alive that have had ungodly influence over your child. With family members, oftentimes there's control. We don't have a lot of filter when it comes to our own family. We can have good godly soul ties with a mother and a father based on love, but there can be ungodly soul ties there between a mother and a father based on impatience or anger and control and things like that. So we have them list that. plus teachers. Maybe there's been some babysitters that haven't been good, or some ungodly friends, or different situations that have been left bad influences for the children.
What about traumas, traumatic events in a person's life, like something even in the birthing room? A child chokes or almost chokes. Cord, what do they call it? Umbilical cord issues, stuff like that.
Right.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Well, that absolutely I have. I've seen that. One of the first ones that we had come in had some oxygen deprivation because of choking through an umbilical cord, and so we had to help him through some of that. I've also seen birthing traumas where the drugs that have been used, like Pitocin, have actually affected the central nervous system of the child. And if there was anything unusual going on in the birthing room, like high trauma, like there was with one of ours.
Hysterical, like somebody in hysterics.
Yeah, the birth mother, the grandmother was present in the room while the mother was giving birth, and the mother passed out because of a blood pressure issue, and she thought her daughter had died, so she was hysterical. Here comes this little boy on Pitocin, nervous, and he really suffered with a spirit of fear. He was very jumpy, like a little rabbit all the time. So birthing traumas, premature birth, cesarean birth, prolonged labor, or any kind of words that were spoken over the child, like they're going to die in birth, or we may lose them. One of the things, even with my sister, she had the cord wrapped around her neck, and we're not really sure what happened, but I'm sure the doctors had probably spoken, we may lose this child on its birthday, because my sister died of strangulation 1 year later on her birthday. Wow. So that word curse was out there.
That came true then. That was the devil's carried that out.
Yeah, he sure did. Also, we look at a lot of different things. School, certainly any open doors or problems with school, fear of teachers, fear of tests, failure. I have a lot of little girls that come in because they want to be perfect, and so they've got this striving, and anytime they're corrected, then that there's a high sensitivity there. They've been embarrassed. Or there could be like competition or even bullies on the playground, where the children have now become, they've been bullied, they can be bullies, because they turn into that. And certainly that's one of the stories that we tell often about the little boy that had that bullying problem of murder and violence that manifested in his life. So you can see a lot. I've also had children with the video games that have come in. They've been so involved and so wrapped in these video games. They've actually, at 5 and 6 years old, it's become their reality, because they're not old enough to be able to tell the difference of what's real and what's not real. And one little boy, almost like Jumanji, got lost in the game. Wow. His whole life was circling around that game. So we had to break that and call that wandering lost spirit out, and he is just as alert and fine as he can be now.
Well, I think that's the case. As you relate this, parents should understand it. The Bible makes it very clear. It's like the eyes are the windows of the soul. So stuff we listen to, and that's the ears as well. I mean, things we see. It's just that sounds like that's what happened with these little kids, and their filter isn't that good, and it's not that good with adults. Some people, I can listen to this music, it doesn't bother me. I can watch this, it doesn't bother me. I think that's just a great deception. And with kids, they don't have anything natural like that. They don't have very little in the way of natural mechanisms, right? They're just like little sponges. Exactly.
Yeah.
So these things, videos, yep.
But you can look at different things too, like hospital stays. That could be very traumatic for children, where they're left in the hospital, like if they've had to have some kind of surgery and their parents are not there or left them overnight. It often opens up abandonment issues. If there's prenatal issues that happened with the mother and the father while the child was in the mother's womb, like there was a lot of bickering in the home or quarreling or negative things that were going on between the parents, then that can affect the child as well. So a lot of the stuff that we take a look at. One of the little boys that we had that we prayed for, I know when we were praying for him, one of our intercessors picked up on something cold, that she felt a coldness over him, and she couldn't figure out what it was. And so she asked him, "Did you ever touch anything really cold?" And because we were praying actually for a spirit of death at the time, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And the little boy said, "Well, I went to my uncle's funeral and I touched his body, and his body was really cold." And what we had ascertained after that was that spirit of death kind of followed him. It bothered him, it tormented him because he hadn't been in that position before. And so we were able to break that fear of death and that sort of thing off of him. and he was free. So
that was traumatic. That was traumatic for him, actually.
Very
being
traumatic.
in Rome. Yeah.
Very traumatic. Yeah. Yeah. So we know, we have to take a look at a lot of different things, generational things. We talked about that too.
Which the parents would know. That's why you do the thing with the parents. The kids don't very little many times, but the older ones might.
Yeah, the 3 to 8 year old group, the parents do almost all of the homework, and quite frankly, the parents do most of the homework in the 9 to 12 year old group, with the exception of the forgiveness. I think it's very important for the children to go through and release forgiveness based on their own issues that they've had with children in class or family members.
And they need to understand it, because even we spend a lot of time with the adults showing how forgiveness is indeed a huge open door for demonic torment in adults, and so it's the same with kids, right? I mean, we have unforgiveness. It gives the devils a legal right to torment us. So we talked about that. Okay, so those are the common open doors that you typically see with people. All right. Yeah. Well, what about, and I'm sure there are others as well, but we're just trying to, there's other specifics. And as people understand, going through this, it's like an art. It's not a science. It's not a recipe. As a minister to kids, you got to hear. God's got to speak, reveal things to the parents. And so it's, if it was a cookbook, like you bake a chocolate cake this way, it'd be easy, but it's not. It's, you have the knowledge, you have the experience, but man, God speaks as you go through this and reveals things. And so it's, very much a learning process for everyone, right? Is how it works. So those are some of the common open doors. Now, what do some people are concerned about demons? Well, kids are going to be afraid. Children, they don't want to hear about demons. Gosh, demons many times scare adults, truth be known, and say that, how do you deal with that, with dealing this whole realm of the demonic realm? Aren't children prone to be afraid when you start talking about demons?
Well, I don't really say demons when I talk to children. I mean, I don't really get into demons. I teach them in a method that they can really understand, because most of these kids know there's something wrong with the anxiety and the fear or the anger. They know. I haven't had any of them come in and say, I don't know why I'm here. I mean, generally they know something's wrong, because they feel the switch too, that 1 minute they're one way and 1 minute they're not. I mean, especially the little boy that said, I don't like being a bad boy, Miss Phyllis, I want to be a good boy. So I explain it to them in a method that is like they're a little house. We talk about us as adults that we're a temple, and that, we have windows that are our eyes and doors that are our mouth. And sometimes there are things that get into our house that do not belong there. And one of the most excellent books I think that we've used with the children is The Little Skunk by Sue Banks, because it's age appropriate for these younger ones. And it explains deliverance beautifully in a very non-threatening way about things that got into the house. And they call them things like anger, things like fear, things like ungodly sensitivity, that sort of stuff, things that they understand. We don't need to call them demons. We call them how they're acting in their lives. And every kid understands what little skunks are, right? Little skunks stink. They stink. And then that's how the book explains it. These stinky things got into your house, and you don't want this stinky stuff living with you. So when I call them out, I just command them by their names, like fear or anxiety or anger, to come out of their house and to release them in the name of Jesus Christ. And they're all on board. I mean, they're so cute. They'll just sit right up in their chairs. They want to be good. They don't like acting like this. We'll call them out and they'll go. And the kids see them go. I mean, it's so cute. A couple of them we've had, they've just yawn and yawn and yawn and yawn. And the one little boy at the end, he looks at me and he goes, Miss Phyllis, I'm really sorry. I don't mean to fall asleep on you, but I just can't stop yawning. And I'm thinking, that's okay. Your house is getting clean.
There you go, getting clean. Is that a pretty common manifestation? What are the most common manifestations with children? I mean, with adults, it can be all sorts of things.
They wring their hands a lot. They rub their feet a lot. They yawn. Sometimes they'll tear up a little bit, but not too much. I think most of it is yawning, sometimes coughing, but it's not exaggerated so much with that. So,
but you feel like you generally can tell. I mean, can you discern most times if they're free of something, or is it?
Yeah, with the little ones, it's real obvious. Okay. It is real obvious. You can see it in their eyes. Even the other day, we were praying for a little girl, and we could just see her eyes just like click. It's like they locked on, and then we were able to call that out, and it had to go. But with anger, you'll see it manifest. Their eyes will get real red, or like they'll get real angry, and we can call those things out. But we handle it in a very gentle manner with the little ones.
Okay. Good. Well, you do the session, you do that deliverance session. You can say it could be anywhere from 20 minutes to maybe a little bit longer for the older ones. But at the conclusion of it, I mean, and they've done, what about a follow-up session? What do you do with the parents or the child after the deliverance? And
well, I have a follow-up session that I bring them in. We talk about what they've kind of walked through in the time. You know, I schedule it about a week out from the regular deliverance session, what things have happened, what they've done. I teach them about how to take authority over certain situations when those spirits try to come back with thoughts for the children, how to pray over the children. We have daytime and evening prayers for the children that are set up for them to begin to pray, so that they're not afraid of that. And we just teach them how to keep, things out. And really, it's very much the same as the way we teach the adults, because the parents are going to have to exact that spiritual warfare and that covering over the children. So the children have a part to play. We give them cues, things that the parents can cue the children with when they begin to notice that they're starting to move in that type of a behavior, to help them stop it short. So we have like a whole different kind of a setup that's gentle, that teaches them how to do spiritual warfare. And with the older ones, how for them to be aware and to move with it. And also, we have some binding prayers and some loosing prayers and some prayers that help them call the person back by name, so those spirits cannot really begin to torment them if they begin to manifest like with a temper tantrum or that sort of thing. We have ways to stop that before it gets into a full-blown situation. So.
And then you have an emphasis too on the discipline side of it, right?
Yeah, that discipline has got to be in there, because I have good heart, and we've had people come in for prayer and brought their children in, and then just gone home and figured it would be a quick fix, and they weren't going to have to deal with it, and they didn't really follow up with how to war for the children, and they were weak in the areas of discipline, and they've called me and said their children are worse because now they're really taking advantage of them. And so I'm very careful, and I think it's difficult when the parents don't have that set up, because those spirits will come back, they'll torment the parents, they'll batter them into submission, and then they're coming right back. So really, the parent does have to be the front line on that, and they've got to have that in place.
Yeah, it makes it so tough, because we talked about, they are the spiritual head over the home. We're not going to pray deliverance for a child when the parent or the step parent or whatever it is, whoever's the spiritual head, caregiver is. It doesn't go through it themselves, because it's just too hard for that little child to stay free. So right. it pretty much is a team effort there with the parent involved, and it's because they've got to do a lot of things to help this child stay free.
And that's going to bring up another question right away too. I bet you any money is that, well, what if we're separated and I take my child through deliverance and then I have to send him over to the steps or the father's house? Maybe there's a step parent involved with it, and how do I do when can I take them through deliverance if they have two homes in that regard? And the answer to that is yes, because we will teach you how to war over your child while they're over there as well. So, even with split homes, it's doable, but one parent has to be on board, and the primary parent would be the one we want to have on board.
Right, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground today, kind of touched on a lot of things quickly. I hope it was interesting for you. And I guess as we begin to conclude here, Phyllis, is any one concluding statement or thought that you'd like to leave with the folks?
Yes, your children can be set free. You don't have to wait for these things to manifest into full-blown demonic torment in teenage years where you're not going to be able to handle it. There's easy ways to handle it when they were little, and get rid of a lot of this stuff before it manifests into really bigger problems when they get older.
Okay. Well, we don't typically in these podcasts, we don't usually talk about our products too much, but I just feel like I just want to mention that in this realm of training, I mean, we train and teach the adults in our boot camp. That's a product that we have on Deliverance Training Boot Camp, but we also have a product for counselors, for deliverance ministry, people interested in ministering deliverance to children, children's deliverance ministry training product. It's really put together by Phyllis. It encapsulates our entitled process with the handouts and everything and the PowerPoints that we do with the parents and the children. So just did want to make you aware of that. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's a topic very near and dear to people's hearts because it involves children, and nothing's more precious to us than our children. And we'd love to hear from you, get feedback on this podcast and others. You can visit us on our website at anbcounseling.com/Deliverance Ministry FM, all one word. That's Deliverance Ministry Frank Mary. And you can listen to the other podcasts there. We would also very much appreciate if you would leave a review for us on iTunes. Okay, go to iTunes, look for our station, Deliverance Ministry FM. Leave a review for us. Leave us a nice review. We would appreciate that because reviews and ratings are everything in terms of visibility there. And in appreciation, if you'll go back to our website and fill out a little form that says you completed your review, we will send you a copy of our Deliverance Ministry Plain and Simple e-manual. It's a manual we sell at our online store, but in appreciation, we will send that to you totally free of charge once we know you've left a review for us. Love to hear from you, as I say, especially if you've got podcast ideas. We want to come out with things that are important to you. We're doing, articles and different things and videos at the time, but we put a lot of effort into these podcasts and we want them to be fruitful. We want to hear from you, and we appreciate very much the time you take to listen to this. We hope you were blessed by it, and we want to bless you and thank you very much for listening. All right, God bless you.